Don't forget to subscribe, leave a comment, and like the video so you won't miss our true horror stories. Mountains are places where your mistakes cannot be forgiven. Every mountain ridge hides danger. The valleys swallow every sound. In 2008, these mountains made a patrol team disappear without any trace. My code name is Hawk. I'm Sergeant Daniel Harris, and you won't find anything I'm about to tell you in the official reports. The military leaders buried it all deep, locked the files, and told us to never speak about it. 15 years later, I still wake up at night hearing Marcus Reed's scratchy voice on the radio, begging for rescue that never came. Even though it was October, the cold went through our clothes and into our bones. Our forward operating base was a cell made of sandbags and barriers dug into the mountainside next to the Pet River Valley. We named it FOB Viper. 32 Marines worked in shifts on patrol duty, following a stretch of road where the Taliban loved to plant bombs. The local people treated us very coldly. It wasn't their fault. Every time we passed through a village, someone's house was being searched. In a place where staying neutral was the only way to survive, trust disappeared quickly. Everything happened suddenly. My squad had been in the country for 5 months, long enough to know the area but still sharp enough to be alert. Corporal Marcus Reed was my best rifleman. He was 23 years old, with a baby face that made him look younger. He volunteered for everything, always first to gear up, last to complain. Private Jonathan Miller handled communications. He was a skinny kid from Ohio who could fix a broken radio with duct tape and hope. They were good Marines, the kind you trust to watch your back when the world goes sideways. The mission briefing came on October 14th. Lieutenant Porter stood in front of a map pointing at a red circle 15 miles northeast of our position. Intelligence reported Taliban movement through a mountain pass connecting 2 valleys. Our job was simple. Take a 4-man patrol, scout the area, mark enemy positions, and get back before nightfall. Standard stuff. We'd done it 100 times. Reed, Miller, and 2 others from 2nd Squad drew the assignment. Lance Corporal Devin Price and Private First Class Kyle Anderson. Price was quiet and careful, the kind of Marine who triple-checked his gear and never missed a detail. Anderson was the opposite, loud, cocky, always talking about the car he was going to buy when he got home. Together, they made a solid team. I helped them load their packs that morning, checking ammunition counts and water supplies. "You got enough batteries for the radio?" I asked Miller as he stuffed his backpack. "6 spares, Sergeant." "We're good." He grinned with that nervous energy he always carried before patrols. Reed slapped a fresh magazine into his rifle, checking the chamber. 15 miles there, 15 back. "We'll be drinking warm energy drinks by 4 p.m. I should have gone with them. That's the thought that keeps me awake. I should have been on that patrol, but Lieutenant Porter wanted me at the FOB coordinating mortar support for another squad running Overwatch on Route Michigan. So I stood at the gate and watched them disappear into the gray haze that clung to the mountains like a blanket. The last transmission came at 1:47 p.m. Miller's voice was clear and calm over the radio. "Viper Main, this is Reaper 2. Checkpoint Delta reached. No enemy contact. Moving to Rally Point Echo, over." I was in the command center when the call came through. Lieutenant Porter copied the message and marked their position on the map, right where they were supposed to be, following the planned route through a narrow canyon that wound between 2 ridge lines. Standard patrol movement. Nothing unusual. Reaper 2 Viper Main copies. Report when you reach Echo. "How's the weather up there?" Static crackled. Then Miller's voice came back, slightly distorted. "Fog's thick, Viper. Visibility down to 50 meters. Ground solid. We're making good time." That was it. The last words any of us heard from them. 15 minutes passed. Then 30. At 2:30 p.m., Porter tried calling them again. Nothing. Just the hiss of dead air. He cycled through frequencies, thinking maybe they'd switch channels by mistake. Still nothing. By 3 p.m., the command center was packed with officers and sergeants staring at that map like it held answers. "Could be terrain blocking the signal," someone suggested. "Those canyons mess with communications." Porter shook his head. They should have reached the rally point by now. Even with the fog, they had plenty of time. At 3:30 p.m., he made the call. "Send a search team." I volunteered immediately, grabbed my rifle, loaded fresh magazines, and assembled a 6-man team. We were rolling out the gate within 20 minutes. 2 Humvees loaded with combat gear, medical supplies, and enough firepower to fight our way out of an ambush. The drive took 90 minutes. The dirt road twisted through the foothills, climbing higher with every mile. The fog Miller mentioned had thickened into a solid wall of gray. Our headlights barely cut 10 feet ahead. The mountains loomed on both sides, dark shapes that seemed to shift when you weren't looking directly at them. No one spoke. We just listened to the diesel engines grinding and the crunch of gravel under the tires. We reached the last known checkpoint at 5:10 p.m., just as daylight started dying. This was where Reed's team should have turned east toward the rally point. I got out with my squad, weapons up, scanning the rocks and sparse plants. The air felt wrong. Too still, no wind, no bird calls, nothing. Just heavy silence pressing down like the mountains were holding their breath. "Spread out," I ordered. "Look for tracks, shell casings, blood, anything." We moved in a loose line, checking both sides of the trail. Private Torres found the first sign 70 meters up the path. Boot prints in the dust. For sets moving in formation. The treads matched our standard issue boots. Reed's patrol had definitely come through here. "Tracks look fresh," Torres said, kneeling beside them. "Can't be more than a few hours old." We followed the trail deeper into the canyon. The walls closed in on both sides, rising 200 feet above us. Perfect ambush terrain. My finger hovered near the trigger guard, eyes scanning every shadow. But there was nothing. No movement, no sound. No sign anyone had been here except those boot prints leading us forward. Half a mile in, we found the first piece of equipment. Miller's radio handset lying in the middle of the path like someone had dropped it mid-step. I picked it up, checking for damage. The casing was intact. No bullet holes, no blood. It just sat there in the dirt, cable still attached. "Why would he drop this?" Torres asked. I didn't answer because I didn't know. Miller treated that radio like his child. He wouldn't abandon it unless something forced him to. I clipped it to my vest and kept moving. 50 meters ahead, we found Price's rifle. An M4 carbine, fully loaded, safety on, leaning against a boulder like he'd set it down to take a bathroom break. Except there was no Price, no signs of a struggle, just the weapon waiting. My gut twisted. Marines don't leave their rifles ever. This drilled into us from day one. You can lose your pack, your helmet, your boots, but never your weapon. Finding that rifle was like finding a severed limb. "Sergeant," someone called from the right flank. I turned to see Corporal Hayes pointing at the ground. More boot prints, except these were scattered, overlapping, moving in different directions, like the patrol had broken formation and started wandering. "They split up," Hayes said, confusion clear in his voice. "Why the hell would they split up?" We followed the scattered tracks. They led off the main path up a steep slope covered in loose rocks. Climbing that slope in full gear would have been exhausting and pointless. There was no tactical reason to go that direction, but the tracks were there, for separate trails heading upward into the fog. "Reed!" I shouted, my voice echoing off the canyon walls. "Marcus! Miller! Anyone!" Silence swallowed my words. Not even an echo came back. It felt like the mountains absorbed the sound before it could travel. We climbed. My boots slipped on the loose rock, sending pebbles cascading down behind us. The fog grew thicker, reducing visibility to arm's length. I could barely see Torres in front of me. The air tasted metallic, like blood, and every breath felt heavier than the last. At the top of the ridge, we found their packs. All 4 backpacks lined up in a neat row, zippers closed, contents undisturbed. I opened Reed's pack with shaking hands. His sleeping bag, food rations, extra ammunition, personal items, everything was still there. Same with the others. It was like they decided to drop their gear and keep walking. "This doesn't make sense," Hayes muttered. "Why would they dump their packs?" I scanned the area looking for anything that explained this. That's when I saw the cave. A dark opening in the rock face, maybe 6 feet high and 4 feet wide, hidden behind a cluster of boulders. The boot prints led straight to it and disappeared inside. My blood went cold. Caves in Afghanistan were either Taliban hideouts or death traps, sometimes both. We'd lost Marines before to cave systems rigged with bombs or ambush positions. But those caves always showed signs of use. Shell casings, trash, disturbed earth. This one looked untouched, ancient, like it had been sealed off for centuries and only recently opened. "Set security," I ordered. "I'm going in." "Sergeant, we should wait for—" "I'm going in," I repeated, cutting Hayes off. My Marines were in there. I wasn't leaving without them. I clicked on my weapon light and stepped into the darkness. The temperature dropped immediately, at least 20 degrees colder inside. The cave was narrow, forcing me to turn sideways to squeeze through. My light played across smooth stone walls covered in strange markings, not Pashto or Arabic, something older, symbols I didn't recognize, carved deep into the rock. The passage opened into a larger room. My light swept across the space, and I froze. In the center of the cave floor was a perfect circle of stones, each one placed with careful precision. And inside that circle, for sets of boot prints facing outward, like Reed and his team had stood there together before what? There was nothing else. No bodies, no blood, no signs of violence. Just those boot prints in the dust, leading into the circle and stopping. Like my Marines had simply stopped existing. I stood there in the cold darkness, weapon light shaking in my hand, and felt something I'd never felt before in combat. Absolute, primal fear. Not the fear of getting shot or blown up. The fear of something far worse. The fear that whatever took my Marines wasn't human. "Sergeant," Hayes called from outside. "You need to see this." I backed out of the cave, unable to tear my eyes away from those prints until I was outside again. Hayes was standing at the edge of the ridge, pointing down into the valley below. I followed his finger and felt my stomach drop. 300 feet down, hidden in the fog, were 4 figures standing motionless in the middle of an empty field. Even from this distance, I could see they were wearing our gear, our uniforms. "Is that them?" Torres whispered. I raised my rifle, flipping down my scope to get a better look. The magnification brought the figures into sharp focus, and what I saw made my trigger finger freeze. They were standing in perfect formation, back straight, arms at their sides, faces turned upward toward us. But their faces were wrong. Too pale, too smooth, like wax masks stretched over skulls. And their eyes reflected the last of the daylight, like animals caught in headlights. "Reed!" I shouted down into the valley. "Marcus!" The figures didn't move, didn't react, just stood there staring up at us with those terrible empty eyes. Then, as one, they turned and walked into the fog's smooth, synchronized movements like puppets on strings. Within seconds, they were gone, swallowed by the gray haze. We scrambled down that ridge so fast, I'm surprised no one broke an ankle. By the time we reached the field, there was nothing. No tracks, no disturbed grass, no sign anyone had been standing there moments before. Just empty ground and the heavy silence pressing down on us from every direction. I keyed my radio with shaking hands. "Viper Main, this is Hawk. We found their gear. No sign of personnel. Requesting immediate quick reaction force and medical helicopters on standby." Lieutenant Porter's voice crackled back, tight with stress. "Copy, Hawk. What's your situation?" I looked at the empty field, at the cave behind us, at my Marines' pale faces. How could I explain what we just saw? How could I put into words the wrongness of this place? "Viper, we need to pull back to the FOB. Something's not right here. We need more personnel and daylight." "Negative, Hawk. You're ordered to continue search until—" "Sir." I cut him off, something I'd never done before. "We need to leave now." There was a long pause. Then, "Copy. Return to base immediately. We'll debrief when you get back." We moved fast, weapons up, eyes scanning constantly. No one spoke during the drive back. What was there to say? We'd gone looking for 4 missing Marines and found their gear, their weapons, and something else. Something that wore their faces but wasn't them. We rolled through the FOB gates at 9:30 p.m. Lieutenant Porter was waiting with a half-dozen officers I didn't recognize. They wore clean uniforms without unit patches, the kind of anonymous look that screamed intelligence or special operations. "Sergeant Harris," Porter said, "these gentlemen need to debrief you immediately." "Sir, my men need rest." "Now, Sergeant." They took me to a closed room with no windows. For 3 hours, they asked the same questions over and over. "What did you see? What did the cave look like? Describe the figures. Are you sure it was your Marines? Could it have been Taliban fighters in stolen gear?" I told them everything. The cave, the circle of stones, the symbols, the figures in the valley. By the end, they were exchanging glances I couldn't read. "Sergeant Harris," one of them finally said, "what we're about to tell you is classified. You will not repeat it to your Marines or anyone else. Is that clear?" I nodded. This isn't the first time this has happened. 6 months ago, a British patrol disappeared in the same area. 3 months before that, an Afghan National Army squad. Same circumstances. Gear left behind. No bodies recovered. My hands clenched into fists. What took them? We don't know. But we believe there's something in those mountains. Something old. And we need you to help us find it before it takes anyone else. That's when I realized this wasn't over. The search for Reed, Miller, Price, and Anderson wasn't ending. It was just beginning. They didn't give us time to process what happened. By 6 a.m. the next morning, I was back in that briefing room with the nameless officers and a new face. Dr. Sarah Vance, an anthropologist from some government agency that didn't officially exist. She spread photographs across the table, images of cave systems throughout Kunar Province, all marked with red X's. "Sergeant Harris," she began, her voice clinical and detached. "What you found yesterday matches 17 other sites we've documented in this region. Each location shares identical characteristics: stone circles, ancient symbols, and a complete absence of remains despite clear evidence of entry." I stared at the photos. Some caves looked exactly like the one we'd found. Others were larger, more elaborate, but the symbols were the same, that same unsettling script carved into stone. "What are they?" I asked. Dr. Vance hesitated, glancing at the officers before answering. "We believe they're threshold markers, doorways, if you will. The local tribes have stories about these places going back centuries. They call them the Silent Gates. According to legend, ancient peoples used them to banish enemies or criminals. Anyone who entered never returned." "That's folklore," Lieutenant Porter said from the doorway. "What we need are facts," one of the officers interjected. "The facts are that we've lost 19 personnel in 6 months. British SAS, Afghan forces, and now 4 of our Marines. Whatever is happening, it's getting worse." Dr. Vance pulled out another photograph. This one showed a village maybe 10 miles from FOB Viper. 3 days ago, an entire family disappeared from this village. The locals sealed the cave entrance with stones and won't go near it. Our sources say there's a village elder who claims to know how to close these gates permanently. "And you want me to find him?" I said, already knowing the answer. "We want you to lead a specialized team. Small footprint, minimal exposure. Get the elder. Get whatever information he has, and get out." I should have refused. Should have told them to send their spies or contractors. But Marcus Reed's face kept flashing in my mind. That thing wearing his skin, staring up at me from the valley. If there was even a chance of bringing him back, I had to try. "When do we move?" I asked. 2 p.m. You'll take a 4-man team plus an interpreter. We'll have air support on standby, but Sergeant." The officer leaned forward. "If you encounter anything like what you saw yesterday, do not engage. Mark the location and get out immediately. We need intelligence, not heroes." By 1:30 p.m., my team was staged at the motor pool. I'd handpicked each man: Corporal Hayes, solid and unshakable; Private Torres, sharp eyes and steady hands; Lance Corporal Jackson, our best marksman; and Faird, our interpreter, a 40-year-old Afghan who'd worked with us for 2 years and knew the tribal politics better than anyone. Faird was the one who broke the silence as we loaded the Humvees. "Sergeant Hawk, the village we're going to, the people there are very afraid. They will not want to speak about the caves. That's why we're bringing you," I said. checking my rifle for the third time. They trust you. He shook his head slowly. No one trusts anyone when it comes to the silent gates. These are not Taliban stories or Russian war ghosts. This is something much older. My grandfather's grandfather knew these stories. He said the mountains remember everything, and some memories should stay buried. The drive took 90 minutes through increasingly rough terrain. The village sat in a narrow valley, 20 mud brick compounds surrounded by terrace fields. Smoke rose from cooking fires. Kids played near a stone well. It looked peaceful, normal, except for the absence of adult men. Only women and elderly moved through the spaces between buildings. We parked outside the village perimeter and approached on foot. The kids scattered immediately. Windows shuttered. By the time we reached the central compound, the place felt like a ghost town. "This isn't right," Hayes muttered, scanning rooftops. "Where is everyone?" Ferd called out in Pashto, his voice echoing off the walls. For a long moment, nothing. Then an old man emerged from the largest compound, leaning heavily on a walking stick. His face was a map of wrinkles, eyes clouded with age, but his gaze was sharp and direct. Ferd spoke rapidly. The old man listened, then responded in a voice like gravel shifting. Their conversation went back and forth for several minutes while my team held security, fingers near trigger guards, watching every shadow. Finally, Ferd turned to me. "His name is Rahman. He says he is the last keeper of the old knowledge. He knows why the gates are opening again. Ask him about the missing Marines." More conversation. Rahman's expression darkened. He gestured toward the mountains, speaking urgently. Ferd's face went pale. "What did he say?" I pressed. He says your men are not dead, but they are not alive either. The gates do not kill. They transform. Anyone who passes through becomes part of what waits on the other side." My blood ran cold. What waits on the other side? Rahman spoke directly to me this time in broken English. "Old ones. Before mosque, before book. They sleep in stone. Gates keep them sleep. But gates cracking now. Too many war. Too many blood. Mountain waking up. How do we close the gates?" I asked. Rahman shook his head. "Cannot close. Can only seal. Need 3 things." He held up gnarled fingers. "Stone from first gate. Blood from keeper. And song that binds." "Where is the first gate?" He pointed north toward a mountain peak shrouded in clouds. 2-day walk. Very dangerous. Taliban there. And worse than Taliban. I was about to respond when Torres hissed a warning. "Movement 3 o'clock. We spun, weapons up. Figures were emerging from between the compounds, 10, 15, 20 of them. Men, women, children, all walking in that same synchronized motion I'd seen in the valley. Their faces were blank, skin waxy and pale. They moved as one organism, surrounding us in a slowly tightening circle. "Ferd, tell Rahman to get inside," I ordered, my voice steady despite the adrenaline spiking through my veins. But Rahman didn't move. He stood his ground, raising his walking stick and shouting words in a language that wasn't Pashto or Dari. Ancient syllables that made my teeth ache and my vision blur. The figures stopped advancing, 30 feet away. They stood in perfect stillness, heads tilted at unnatural angles, watching us with eyes that reflected light like polished stones. "Sergeant," Jackson whispered. "That's Anderson. Front row, 4th from the left." My stomach dropped. He was right. Private Kyle Anderson stood among the figures, still wearing his torn uniform, face slack and empty. But it wasn't him. Not anymore. The thing wearing Anderson's body opened its mouth. Instead of words, a sound came out like wind through hollow reeds. A chorus of voices speaking in unison. "Leave the keeper. Take the gate." "Like hell?" I growled, adjusting my grip on my rifle. Rahman kept chanting, his voice growing stronger. The figures began to retreat, step by synchronized step, but their eyes never left us. The thing that had been Anderson tilted its head further, bones cracking audibly, and smiled. It was the worst smile I'd ever seen. Too wide, splitting the face almost to the ears. Then they turned and walked back into the compounds, disappearing into shadows. The silence that followed was deafening. Raman lowered his stick, breathing heavily. They test. See if I still strong. Songs still work. But not for long. Every day they stronger. We need to move, Hayes urged. If those things come back with weapons. They don't need weapons, Faird interrupted, his voice shaking. Raman says they only need to touch you. Once they touch you, you become like them. I made a decision. Raman, you're coming with us back to the FOB where it's safe. He laughed, a bitter sound. No place safe. But yes, I come. Show you first gate. Teach you sealing before I too old or mountain take me too. We loaded him into the Humvee and started the drive back. Raman sat in silence, staring at the mountains like he was reading a story written in the stone. Halfway back, he spoke quietly to Faird, who translated. He says the gates have been sealed 4 times in history. Each time required great sacrifice. The last sealing was during the reign of Alexander, when this land was still called Bactria. 300 men entered the gates to seal them from inside. None returned. 300 men, I repeated. And you want us to do it with what? A fire team and an old man. The song is stronger now, Raman said in English. Old one's weaker, but must move fast. Every night, more gates open. Soon too many. Then, he drew a finger across his throat. When we got back to FOB Viper at 6:20 p.m., the base was on high alert. Lieutenant Porter met us at the gate with news that made my gut clench. We've got reports coming in from 3 other villages. Missing persons, at least 20 civilians in the last 48 hours. And that's just what's being reported. Command thinks the actual number is much higher. I helped Raman out of the Humvee. Sir, this is Raman. He knows how to seal the gates. Porter looked at the old man skeptically. Sergeant, I hope you know what you're doing. Command is pulling the plug on this operation. As of 10 p.m. tonight, all patrols are suspended. We're going full defensive posture until they can figure out what the hell is happening. We can't wait, I argued. Raman says. I don't care what Raman says. We've lost 4 Marines, and I'm not losing anymore. The decision is final. I started to protest, but Raman grabbed my arm with surprising strength. Tonight, he whispered. Must go tonight. Moon is dark. Old one's weakest at dark moon. Wait longer, we miss window. I looked at Hayes, Torres, Jackson, saw the same grim determination in their eyes. We all knew what had to be done. Orders be damned. Sir, I said carefully, request permission to run one final recon, just to mark the location of the first gate for when command authorizes the mission. Porter studied me for a long moment. He knew I was lying, knew exactly what I was planning. You have until 6 a.m. After that, if you're not back, I'm reporting you AWOL and sending a quick reaction force to drag your butt back. Understood, sir. We had 8 hours. 8 hours to hike to the first gate, perform whatever ritual Raman knew, and pray it worked. 8 hours to save not just Marcus Reed and the others, but everyone else who might disappear into those mountains. As we prepped our gear under the harsh lights of the motor pool, Faird pulled me aside. Sergeant Hawk, Raman told me something else. Something he did not want to say in front of the others. What? He says the song requires a life. Someone must stay at the gate after it is sealed. Stay until the end. The end of what? Faird's eyes were dark with fear. Until the mountain decides to let them go. Could be days. Could be years. Raman says the last keeper was his great-grandfather. He entered the gate in 1847. His body was found in 1923. He had not aged a single day. I should have called it off right then. Should have told Porter everything and let someone else handle this nightmare. But when I closed my eyes, I saw Reed's face. Saw Miller adjusting that radio. Saw all of them trusting me to keep them safe. I'd already failed them once. I wasn't going to fail them again. We moved out at 10 p.m. on foot. No vehicles, minimal gear. 5 of us plus Raman. Myself, Hayes, Torres, Jackson, and Faird. The old man set a brutal pace despite his age, navigating the mountain trails like he'd walked them 1,000 times. Maybe he had. The moon was a sliver, barely providing light. We moved by night vision goggles, following Raman's direction through increasingly dangerous terrain. At midnight, we stopped to rest on a ridge overlooking a deep valley. Raman pointed to a cliff face on the far side, barely visible in the darkness. There, first gate, where it all began. Even from this distance, I could feel it, a wrongness in the air, like reality was thinner there. The temperature dropped 10 degrees. My breath misted. Frost formed on my rifle despite it being October in Afghanistan. How do we get there? Hayes asked. Must climb, Raman said simply. The descent into the valley took an hour. The climb up the other side took 3. My hands were raw, muscles screaming, but we kept moving. Raman never faltered, scrambling up rock faces that should have been impossible for a man his age. At 3:20 a.m., we reached the cave entrance. It was massive, at least 20 feet high, carved with those same symbols, but far more elaborate. The stone circle inside was larger too, big enough to fit 50 men. And in the center, something that made my blood freeze. For figures stood perfectly still, facing outward: Reed, Miller, Price, Anderson. Their eyes glowed faint blue in the darkness. Jesus Christ, Torres whispered. Raman was already chanting, pulling items from a pouch at his waist. A piece of dark stone, a curved knife, a leather scroll covered in writing. He gestured for us to form a circle around the standing figures. No matter what happens, he said urgently, do not break circle. Do not stop chanting when I teach you words. If circle breaks, they take us all. What about them? I pointed at Reed and the others. Can we bring them back? Raman's expression was infinitely sad. Perhaps, if song strong enough, if mountain willing. But Sergeant Hawk, they not same. Even if bodies return, souls may be changed. I didn't care. Changed was better than gone. Teach us the song. As Raman began speaking the ancient words, teaching us syllable by syllable, I felt the temperature drop further. The figures in the circle stirred. Reed's head turned slowly toward me, and for just a moment, I saw recognition in those glowing eyes. Then his mouth opened, and he spoke in that horrible chorus voice. Hawk, why did you leave us? My voice caught in my throat, but I forced out the words Raman had taught us, adding my voice to the growing chant. Hayes joined in, then Torres, then Jackson, then Faird. Our voices rose together, filling the cave with sound that seemed to resonate in the stone itself. The figures began to scream. The screaming didn't sound human. It was layered, dozens of voices compressed into 4 throats, shrieking in frequencies that made my molars vibrate and my vision swim. Reed's body convulsed, back arching impossibly, fingers splayed like claws. The other 3 mirrored his movements exactly, puppets jerking on invisible strings. Keep chanting, Raman shouted over the noise, his voice raw but steady. Blood ran down his arm where he'd cut his palm with the curved knife, letting drops fall onto the dark stone in his other hand. I forced the words out, syllables that felt wrong on my tongue, consonants that shouldn't exist in any human language. Hayes was beside me, face pale but determined, matching the rhythm. Torres stumbled over a phrase, and the temperature spiked violently, frost melting to steam in seconds. The figures lunged forward half a step before Raman's voice cracked like thunder, driving them back. Do not stop, the old man commanded. Even 1 second, circle breaks. The symbols carved into the cave walls began to glow, faint at first, then brighter, pulsing in time with our chanting. The stone circle beneath the figures lit up, threads of light connecting each carved symbol like a circuit powering up. The air itself felt heavy, pressing down on us with physical weight. Jackson's voice wavered. He was staring at Anderson, tears streaming down his face. They'd been bunkmates, close as brothers. Seeing his friend twisted into this thing was breaking him. Jackson, stay with me, I barked between syllables. He needs us focused. The light intensified. The figures began to sink. Not falling, but being pulled down into the stone itself, like it had turned to liquid. Reed's glowing eyes locked onto mine, and for a fraction of a second, I saw him. The real him, terrified, pleading. Hawk, His voice cut through the chorus, clear and human for just one word. Hurts. My throat constricted, but I didn't stop chanting. Couldn't stop. Raman was moving around the circle now, pressing the bloodied stone against each carved symbol on the ground, speaking faster, louder. The cave shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. Somewhere deep below, that grinding sound returned, like continental plates shifting. The figures were waist-deep now, still screaming, hands reaching upward. Miller's fingers brushed the edge of the circle, and where they touched, the stone cracked. A hairline fracture that spread toward Torres. "Jump back!" I shouted. Torres leaped away just as the crack reached him. The circle held, but barely. Raman was at the head of the formation now, holding the bloodied stone above his head, shouting words that made the air ripple and distort. Then he stepped into the circle. "Raman, no!" Ferd screamed, breaking his chant. The old man ignored him, walking calmly between the sinking figures until he stood in the exact center. He placed the stone on the ground and knelt, pressing both palms flat against it. The light exploded outward, blinding white, and the figures vanished with a final unified shriek that echoed and echoed and echoed. When my vision cleared, Raman was still kneeling, but he'd aged not years, decades. His hair had gone completely white, skin hanging loose on his frame like it had forgotten how to cling to bone. But he was smiling. "It is done," he whispered. "First gate sealed. But Sergeant Hawk," he coughed, blood flecking his lips. "I cannot leave circle. Must stay. Keep gate closed. You understand?" I did, and I hated it. "How long?" "Until Mountain releases me, or until I die. Whichever comes first." He settled into a sitting position, back against the stone. "Tell my village. Tell them Raman kept his oath." "We can't just leave you here," Hayes protested. "You must. Gate will not hold without keeper. And there are more gates, 17 I count. All opening. You stop them." "Yes." His eyes found mine, ancient and knowing. "You save your Marines. Bring them home." "They're gone," I said, my voice cracking. We watched them sink into the stone. Raman shook his head slowly. "Not gone. Trapped between here and there. Other gates connect to this one. You seal them all, you free everyone. But must be fast. Dark moon ends tomorrow night." After that, he didn't finish. Didn't need to. We stood there in that cave. 5 armed men and 1 dying elder, and none of us knew what to say. Finally, Raman spoke again, softer now. "Go. I have water. I have time. Mountain and I, we make peace now." We left him there. Had to. Every step away from that cave felt like betrayal, but we moved anyway, climbing back down the cliff face as dawn broke over the mountains. By the time we reached the valley floor at 6:15 a.m., the sun was burning off the night's frost, and my radio was screaming. "Hawk, Viper Main. Respond immediately." Lieutenant Porter's voice was tight with barely controlled fury. I keyed the mic. "Viper Main, Hawk. We're 5 miles out. Returning to base. Sergeant, you are 15 minutes past your authorized window. What the hell happened up there?" "We sealed the first gate, sir. But we need to move on the others now." Static. Then, "Say again." "Sir, there are 17 gates total. We need assets, manpower, and we need them before tomorrow night, or this entire province is going to disappear." More static. When Porter came back, his voice had changed. "Hawk, command wants you back here immediately, and they're sending someone to talk to you. Someone with serious pull. They've been listening to this whole conversation." My stomach dropped. "How long have they been listening, sir?" "Since the moment you left the wire last night. Every word." We double-timed it back to FOB Viper, arriving at 7:45 a.m. The base had transformed overnight. Black helicopters sat on the landing zone, the kind without markings or identification numbers. Personnel in civilian clothes and plate carriers moved with the efficiency of Tier 1 operators. The command center had been taken over entirely. A woman in her 50s met us at the gate. No uniform, just tactical pants and a polo shirt with a pistol on her hip. Her eyes were the coldest I'd ever seen. "Sergeant Harris, I'm Director Klein. Walk with me. It wasn't a request. I handed my rifle to Hayes and followed her to a shipping container that had been set up as a mobile command center. Inside, walls covered with topographic maps, satellite imagery, and photographs of cave systems throughout eastern Afghanistan. "You've done something remarkable," Klein said without preamble. "You've confirmed what we've suspected for 18 months. These gates aren't natural formations. They're artificial, built by a civilization that predates written history. With respect, ma'am, I don't care about the history. I care about getting my Marines back." She studied me for a long moment. "Your Marines are gone, Sergeant. The sooner you accept that, the easier this will be," Rahman said. Rahman is a village elder who believes in fairy tales. She cut me off. "Whatever you saw in that cave, it was a psychogenic response to extreme stress, possibly hallucinogenic compounds in the cave environment. We're running tests." I stared at her. "You're joking." "I never joke about operational security." She pulled out a tablet showing me a document. "This is a non-disclosure agreement. You and your team will sign it. You will never speak about what happened in those mountains. In exchange, you'll receive medals for valor and immediate rotation back to the States. And if we refuse?" Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Then you'll be detained for psychiatric evaluation and held until you're no longer deemed a security risk," which could be quite some time. Before I could respond, an alarm blared throughout the base. Red lights flashed. Personnel scrambled to positions. Klein grabbed a radio from her belt. "Sit rep." A voice crackled back. "Multiple contacts. North perimeter. At least 50 individuals approaching on foot. No weapons visible, but they're not responding to warnings." We ran to the north wall. What I saw made my blood turn to ice. A crowd was walking toward the base, moving in perfect synchronization. Men, women, children, all with that same waxy skin and glowing eyes. And at the front, leading them, was Corporal Marcus Reed. "Hold fire!" Klein shouted into her radio. "I repeat, hold fire." "Ma'am, those things are hostile," I said urgently. "If they breach the wire, we need to study them, Sergeant. This is a first contact scenario with an unknown entity." "That's not first contact. That's an invasion." The crowd stopped 50 meters from the wire. Reed stepped forward alone, head tilted at that unnatural angle, and spoke in that terrible chorus voice that carried across the distance with impossible clarity. "We offer trade. Return what you took. Give us the gates, or we take everyone." "What did we take?" Klein called back. Reed's head swiveled, tracking her voice. "The sealer, the keeper, the blood price. You stole completion. Gates must stay open. Balance must restore." "They want ramen," I said. "They know we sealed the first gate, and they want us to break it." Klein's jaw tightened. "Can't give them what we don't have. They don't know that." For several seconds, nobody moved. The crowd stood motionless, 50 pairs of glowing eyes fixed on the base. Then Reed smiled that horrible too-wide smile and raised one hand. As one, the crowd stepped forward. "Open fire," Klein ordered. The machine guns on the north wall opened up, tracers cutting through the morning air. Rounds tore into the crowd, but the figures didn't fall. They kept walking, bodies jerking with impacts but never stopping. Where bullets punched through, dust sprayed out instead of blood, and the holes sealed themselves within seconds. "Grenades!" someone shouted. Explosions ripped through the crowd, scattering bodies. But the parts pulled themselves back together, reforming, continuing their advance. They reached the wire and began climbing, moving with unnatural strength and coordination. "Fall back to secondary positions." Klein was running now, pulling me with her. "Get to the armory. We're going to need everything we have." I yanked free. "Bullets won't stop them. I told you that. The only thing that works is the ritual, the sealing. We don't have the resources." "Then get them," I roared, "or everyone on this base becomes like Reed." She stared at me, calculations running behind those cold eyes. Then she grabbed her radio. "Command, this is Klein. Authorization code Delta 7 to 9. I need immediate air support and full authorization to deploy sealing teams to all documented gate locations. Yes, I understand the resource allocation. I don't care. If we lose this FOB, we lose the entire valley. The first figure cleared the wire. It was a child, maybe 8 years old, moving with the same mechanical precision as the adults. Torres put 3 rounds center mass. Kept coming. Hayes stepped up with the grenade launcher, firing a high-explosive round point-blank. The explosion vaporized the child's torso, but the dust swirled, compressed, and reformed in seconds. "Inside!" I shouted. "Get inside now!" We fell back to the command center, sealing the door. Through the window, I watched the figures pour over the wire. They didn't run, didn't rush, just walked with that terrible purpose, spreading through the base like an infection. "How long until air support?" I asked Klein. 10 minutes for the first strike. "But Sergeant..." She was looking at her tablet, face pale. "We're getting reports from 17 locations. They're all doing this. Every gate we documented is sending out crowds. We're talking hundreds, maybe thousands of these things mobilizing simultaneously. They're coordinated," Hayes said from the window. "Like a hive mind. Or one mind controlling many bodies," Faird added quietly. He'd been silent since we returned, but now he spoke with certainty. "Rahman told me the old stories. Before they were sealed, the gates led to a single place. One prison for one prisoner. Something so terrible it took 300 men to lock it away." "What was it?" Klein demanded. Faird met her eyes. "Something that eats worlds." The building shook as something slammed into the door. Once, twice. The metal began to warp inward. Through the window, I could see more figures gathering, pressing against the building. Then I heard it, Reed's voice, muffled but clear. "Hawk, open the door. We just want to go home." My hand moved toward the lock without my permission. Some part of me, some desperate part, wanted to believe that was really Reed, that I could save him by just opening the door. Hayes grabbed my wrist. "That's not him." "I know," I whispered. "But God, I wish it was." The building shook again. Cracks spread across the walls. We had minutes, maybe less. Klein was shouting into her radio, coordinating with command, but I could hear the defeat creeping into her voice. Whatever assets were coming, they wouldn't arrive in time. That's when I saw it, on one of the monitors showing satellite feeds, a pattern emerging. The crowds weren't randomly attacking. They were moving toward specific locations, forming circles around certain buildings. They were recreating the stone circles using their own bodies. "They're opening more gates," I said. "Right here on the base. They're going to turn FOB Viper into a threshold." Klein followed my gaze to the monitor. "How long?" "Based on what we saw, minutes." She made a decision. "Everyone who can fight, grab a weapon. Everyone else, get to the helipad. We're evacuating." "We can't run from this," I argued. "It'll just spread." "Then what do you suggest, Sergeant?" I looked at my team. Hayes, Torres, Jackson, Faird. All of them battered, exhausted, terrified, but still standing, still ready. "We do what Rahman did. We become keepers. All 17 gates at once." "That's a death sentence," Klein said. "It's the only sentence that matters." The door burst open. Figures poured in, reaching for us with those pale hands. We fought our way out, firing, punching, anything to create space. Made it to the helipad where 2 Blackhawks were spinning up, rotors already turning. "Load up," Klein shouted. But I wasn't getting on that helicopter. Neither was my team. We ran the opposite direction, toward the armory, fighting through a base that was rapidly becoming a nightmare. Behind us, I heard Klein screaming my name, but her voice was drowned out by rotor wash as the helicopters lifted off. We had maybe an hour before dark moon ended. 1 hour to reach 16 more gates and seal them all. It was impossible. But Marcus Reed was in there somewhere, trapped between worlds. And I'd promised myself I wouldn't fail him again. We hit the armory at a dead sprint, Hayes kicking the door in while Torres and Jackson provided cover. Inside, the walls were lined with weapons, explosives, and equipment we'd never normally be authorized to touch. None of it would matter against what we were facing, but we loaded up anyway. Old habits die hard. We need a vehicle, I said, grabbing extra magazines. Something fast that can handle mountain terrain. Ferd pointed to the motor pool through the window. The armored trucks are too slow, but there, a single Polaris MRZR sat between two Humvees, keys still in the ignition. The four-seat tactical vehicle was built for speed and rough country. Perfect. We fought our way across 50 meters of open ground. The figures had spread throughout the base, but they moved slow, methodical. They weren't trying to kill us. They were herding us, pushing us toward the center where more of them were forming that human circle. Jackson took point, his rifle barking in controlled bursts. The rounds didn't kill the figures, but the impact staggered them enough to create gaps. We pushed through, reached the MRZR, and piled in. I took the wheel, Hayes riding shotgun with the map and GPS. Closest gate is 4 miles northeast, Hayes said as I fired up the engine. Cave system near a dried riverbed. I floored it, the lightweight vehicle leaping forward. Behind us, FOB Viper burned. Smoke rose in thick columns as the figures continued their work, transforming our base into something else. Something wrong. The drive was brutal. No roads, just open terrain and whatever paths we could find. The MRZR bounced and slid, suspension screaming, but it held together. At 8:47 a.m., we reached the coordinates. The cave entrance was smaller than the first gate, maybe 6 feet across, but the symbols were identical. And standing guard were a dozen figures, facing outward in a protective circle. "We don't have time to fight through them," Torres said. "We don't have to." I pulled out the piece of stone Rahman had given me before we left that first cave. I'd forgotten about it until now. A small chip of the dark rock he'd used in the ritual. Rahman said all the gates are connected. If we use this, maybe we can seal them faster. "Maybe isn't good enough," Jackson muttered. But he was already out of the vehicle, rifle up. We moved fast and loud, laying down suppressive fire that scattered the figures. They reformed quickly, but it bought us seconds. I ran into the cave with Ferd, leaving the others to hold the entrance. The stone circle glowed faintly, already active. I could feel the pull, that same wrongness that had filled the first cave. Ferd began chanting, his voice wavering but strong. I placed Rahman's stone in the center and pressed my cut palm against it, my blood mixing with the old man's. The effect was immediate. The glow intensified, symbols flaring bright, and a sound like shattering glass filled the air. The pull stopped. The wrongness faded. The cave went dark and silent. "One down," I said, stumbling back outside. 16 to go. We repeated the process at the next gate and the next, racing against time, against the rising sun, against the impossible math of what we were trying to do. Each gate took 15 to 20 minutes to seal. We didn't have enough time. By the fourth gate, at 10:23 a.m., we were exhausted. Torres had taken a hit from a falling rock, blood seeping through his sleeve. Jackson was limping from a twisted ankle. Ferd's voice was nearly gone from constant chanting. But we kept moving. The fifth gate was different. When we arrived at 11:18 a.m., there were no figures guarding it. Instead, standing alone at the entrance was Private Jonathan Miller. "Miller!" I shouted, running toward him. Hayes grabbed my arm. "Hawk, wait!" But I yanked free. That was my Marine, my responsibility. I got within 10 feet before I saw his eyes. Still glowing, still wrong. "Sergeant Harris," Miller said, and his voice was his own. Not the chorus, just him. "Please. It hurts so much. Make it stop." My rifle wavered. "Miller, buddy, we're trying. We're sealing the gates. We're going to get you out." He shook his head slowly, tears cutting tracks through the dust on his face. "You can't. We're too deep, too far gone. But you can end it. The only way out is through." "What does that mean?" He stepped aside, gesturing to the cave. "Someone has to go all the way through, past the gates to the source. Close it from the inside." "That's suicide," Hayes said from behind me. "Yes," Miller agreed. "But it's the only way. Rahman's method only holds temporarily. The gates will open again. They always do, unless someone goes to the center and seals it permanently. How do you know this? I demanded. His smile was heartbreaking. Because we're connected now. All of us. Reed, Price, Anderson, me. We can feel it. The thing that's waking up. And Sergeant. His voice dropped to a whisper. It's so hungry. Then he walked into the cave and disappeared. We sealed the 5th gate in silence. And the 6th. And the 7th. Each one felt heavier, like we were pushing against an invisible current. By 2:45 p.m., we'd sealed 11 gates. 6 remained, and the sun was arcing toward the western peaks. We're not going to make it, Jackson said what we were all thinking. Dark moon ends at 6:47 p.m. That's 4 hours, 6 gates. Then we move faster, I said, but even I could hear the defeat in my voice. The 12th gate was the hardest yet. The figures protecting it fought back, actually fought, using rocks and debris as weapons. We took casualties. Torres went down hard, a stone catching him in the temple. He wasn't moving. Leave me, he gasped when I tried to drag him. Seal the gate. That's the mission. I'm not leaving anyone else, I snarled, hauling him over my shoulder. Hayes and Jackson held the entrance while Faird and I completed the ritual. When we emerged, Torres was conscious again, blood matting his hair but eyes focused. 13, he muttered. Unlucky number. Let's make it 14. We did, but it cost us the MRZR. The vehicle finally gave out, transmission screaming before dying completely. We continued on foot, running when we could, walking when we couldn't. Time was bleeding away. At 5:12 p.m., with the sun painting the mountains gold, we reached the 15th gate. Only 2 remained, but we were shattered. Torres could barely stand. Jackson's ankle had swollen to twice its normal size. Faird had stopped speaking entirely, his voice destroyed. Hayes was holding together through sheer will. And I was seeing things. Shadows that moved wrong, whispers in languages I shouldn't understand. The longer we spent near these gates, the more they infected us. We were running out of time in more ways than one. The 15th gate sealed at 5:39 p.m. 1 hour and 8 minutes until dark moon ended. 2 gates left. We can't reach both, Hayes said. Checking the GPS, gate 16 is 3 miles north. Gate 17 is 5 miles east. Even if we split up. We don't split up, I said. But my mind was racing. Miller's words echoed. Someone has to go all the way through. Hawk, Faird rasped, his ruined voice barely audible. There is another way. Rahman told me. If you cannot seal all gates in time, you seal the source, the first prison where it all began. Where is it? He pointed to a peak in the distance, half hidden in clouds. There. Mount Sikaram, the highest point in Kunar. Before Islam, before Buddhism, before Alexander, there was a temple. They built the gates to contain what lived in the temple. If you seal the temple, all gates seal with it. How do we get there? Jackson asked. We don't, I said quietly. I do. Alone. Absolutely not. Hayes started. But I cut him off. You 3 seal the 16th gate. I'll take the 17th and then the temple. It's the only way we cover everything before dark moon ends. You can't seal a gate alone, Torres argued. The ritual requires. I held up Rahman's stone. It was glowing faintly, warm in my palm. This stone has been used at 11 gates now. It's absorbed enough power. I think it can do the work of multiple people if needed. It was a guess, a hope, but we were out of options. Hayes grabbed my shoulder. If you're not back by 7 p.m., then you get everyone you can and you run. Get out of this province. Get out of Afghanistan if you can. We split up at 5:51 p.m. I watched my team disappear to the north, 3 limping figures moving as fast as their broken bodies would allow. Then I turned east and ran. The 17th gate was in a canyon so narrow I had to turn sideways to enter. No figures guarded it. No sounds. Just silence and that overwhelming wrongness that made my skin crawl. I sealed it at 6:23 p.m., 24 minutes until dark moon ended, and I still had to reach the temple. Mount Sikaram loomed above, peak shrouded in clouds. The climb was vertical in places, forcing me to use hands and feet, rifle slung across my back. My lungs burned, muscles screamed, but I kept moving. At 6:42 p.m., 5 minutes to spare, I reached the summit. The temple wasn't ruins. It was intact, carved directly from the mountain itself. Massive stone columns held up a roof decorated with those same symbols. And in the center, a pit, deep, black, bottomless. The source of everything. Standing at the edge of the pit was Marcus Reed. "Hawk," he said, and this time his voice was entirely his own. "You made it." "Reed?" I approached slowly, hand near my sidearm. Are you you?" "Mostly," he smiled, and it almost looked natural. "Enough to make a choice. Enough to say goodbye. We're sealing this. All of it. You'll be free." He shook his head. "That's not how it works. Someone has to stay. A keeper for the source. Just like ramen at the first gate. Someone to hold the door closed from the inside. Then I'll." "No." His voice was firm. "It has to be one of us. One of the ones who went through. We're already part of it. Already changed. If you stayed, it would just consume you. But me, I can hold it. I can keep it sleeping." Tears burned my eyes. "Reed, I can't ask you to." "You're not asking. I'm volunteering." He pulled something from his pocket, dog tags. His and the others. "Give these to command. Tell them we died in combat. Heroes. Not whatever this is." I took the tags, metal cold in my palm. "Miller, Price, Anderson, are they?" "They're with me. All of us together. We'll take turns. Keep watch. Make sure it never wakes up." He gestured to the pit. "You need to do the ritual now. Seal it while the dark moon holds." I knelt at the edge of the pit, placed Raman's stone on the ground, and began the chant Ferd had taught me. My voice was rough, broken, but the words came. The stone glowed brighter and brighter until it was painful to look at. The pit began to close, stone flowing like water, sealing itself. Reed stood at the edge, watching me with eyes that were human again. Completely human. "Tell my mom I loved her," he said. "Tell her I died doing something that mattered. Reed, go Hawk, before it's too late." The stone sealed completely just as the sun dipped below the horizon. Dark moon ended, and Marcus Reed was gone, sealed inside a mountain with 3 other Marines and whatever ancient thing they were holding back. I staggered down the mountain in darkness, following the path by feel and memory. Somewhere in the night I heard gunfire, then silence, then nothing. I found Hayes, Torres, and Jackson at dawn, sitting outside the sealed 16th gate. They looked like ghosts, pale and hollow-eyed but alive. "The gates?" I asked. "Sealed," Hayes confirmed. "All of them. Whatever you did at the temple, it worked. The figures just stopped, collapsed like their strings were cut." "And FOB Viper?" "Rescue teams arrived an hour ago. They found survivors, but..." He shook his head. "It's bad, Hawk. Real bad." We walked back together, for Marines who'd seen something we could never explain, would never be believed about. The sun rose over the mountains, beautiful and terrible. And somewhere deep in Mount Sikaram, Marcus Reed stood watch over a sleeping nightmare. They gave us medals, told us we'd held off a coordinated Taliban assault, saved the base, recovered critical intelligence. The official story had nothing to do with gates or ancient things or Marines who sacrificed themselves to hold back the dark. Director Klein personally handed me Reed's silver star. I wanted to throw it in her face. Instead, I saluted and said nothing. We were rotated stateside within a week. Honorable discharges, full benefits, and non-disclosure agreements so thick they could stop bullets. I signed because what choice did I have? Who would believe the truth anyway? Hayes works construction in Colorado now. Jackson teaches high school in Texas. Torres went to medical school. Says he wants to help people after watching so many get hurt. Ferd disappeared. I've tried to find him, but it's like he never existed. Me? I became a park ranger in Montana. Lots of mountains, lots of caves. I checked them all, looking for symbols I hope I never find again. Sometimes at night when the moon is dark, I swear I can hear Reed's voice on the wind. Not the chorus voice, his real voice, saying he's okay, saying they're holding, saying the world is safe for one more day. I hope he's right. I hope they can hold forever, because I've seen what happens when ancient things wake up. And if that temple ever opens again, there won't be anyone left to stop it. My name is Sergeant Daniel Harris, call sign Hawk. And this is the truth about what happened in Kunar Province in 2008. Command will deny it. Records will show something else. But I was there. I saw it. And I'll carry those 4 dog tags until the day I die. If you're watching this and you're in the military, do me a favor. If you ever get orders to investigate a cave system in eastern Afghanistan, especially near Mount Sikaram, find a reason to say no. File a medical report. Go AWOL. Just don't go into those mountains. Some doors should stay closed. Some Marines should never be forgotten. And some sacrifices are too great to ever repay. But Reed, Miller, Price, Anderson, if you can somehow hear this wherever you are, you're not forgotten. You're heroes. And I'm sorry I couldn't bring you home. Still watching without subscribing? Hit that button now. And in the comments, tell me where you're from and what time you're watching this. Let's remember these warriors. ****.